Welcome back to the State of Survival Dimension Duckside. Now, before we go into this game, what do you think about these animalistic kind of survival games? Like, they're kind of making kind of like a goof, right? Like, oh, it's ducks in survival. Ha ha ha. Ha. Like, what do you think about that? Is it like fun or is it kind of like a eh?
I have to say, I had more fun playing Duckside than I ever have playing Rust so far. And I played a good like 7 or 8 hours of Duckside. And I definitely was felt more drawn to play Duckside again over Rust itself.
So I got from that is you like the fact that there's ducks in it. Like I think it's funny there's ducks in it. I kind of like the flapping, flying thing, and honestly, I could see some other survival games kind of taking inspiration from this and making some funny stuff, right? Like,
Well, if I had to give Duckside a description in one sentence, it would be it really quacks me up.
well, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a quack at it. This is terrible, folks. I know, puns aside. But no, Dimension, I enjoy Duckside myself. And yes, it's almost identical to Rust. I'm not going to even like sugarcoat that. There is so much that like immediately makes me think Rust, base building, Rust, the gun, the combat, everything feels like Rust. And it's not a bad thing. This is a fun game that uses Rust like mechanics and even just other mechanics that are in other survival games to really kind of like it's familiar, it's easy to fall into. Like I immediately knew how to get the wood and the fiber and all that stuff because every survival game has the same kind of repetition, but I was easy, the UI was very easy to understand. I was able to get through things really quickly, and yeah, it took me a second or two to get used to like the three-dimensional combat space. Like I know that in a lot of other survival games you can jump and stuff and shoot, but in this game you can literally fly up in the air and you can go any way you want, up, down, left, right, front, center, backward, do little spins, all that kind of stuff. But what got me the most about this game was the effort they put into the duck animation.
Well, speaking of the animations, how do you feel about it using its beak to chop down trees and stuff before you have tools? Where in other survival games we're using rocks and stuff to chop trees in or
Hey,
punching,
hey,
you want to go to
hey,
Minecraft, we're
hey,
punching trees.
you know what? My duck is a Chad, and it has a beak of steel. Okay. Actually, I'm not sure if they call it a beak. It's a
It's
you
a
know what?
it's
It
a
doesn't matter.
it's a bill, but it's fine.
Oh yeah,
We won't
I have
hold
a
that
bill
against
of
you.
steel. Okay, who else can say that? I can chop down wood and break rocks with my beak. I can break metal barrels and doors with my beak. But the beak can't break everything. That's one thing I learned. There are some things around the map that the beak can't break, and I do like the fact that there are some limitations to what you can break with the beak. Because even if it like only did 0.1 damage per hit, it's still something I can do with a beak, right? Bill. What did you think about fighting the NPCs, like the hunters and that kind of stuff?
Well, I'm glad you brought up that they're hunters because that was my favorite part about the NPCs is the first time I got into combat with something, I didn't see it before I was duck soup. It took me out and I circled back around to that same island in that same area when I respawned and I saw a campsite and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to go check that out." Realized that it was hunters camp down there and they're the ones that took me out the first time, which I thought was hilarious. It's not just I expected other NPC ducks to be attacking you because it's Duckside. It just like took my enjoyment up another notch. It was hunters instead. That being said, the hunters start off with guns already. So as a early bird, you're very much tasked with a struggle to be able to use the bow to take out these hunters. I struggled with that a lot. I did eventually raid a barn with a couple of hunters in it and was able to take them out through the windows with the bow. But if you're out in the open fighting them and they're, using rifles and machine guns and stuff like that, and all you have is a wood bow and some stone arrows, it's kind of dangerous.
My first experience was I actually played with our producer Red Falcon, Duckside, and we got kind of killed at this like railroad yard area. So we ended up like flying further away. We started like kind of gathering resources, and I'm like, hey, there's like this like hunters camp right over on the island next to us. So we go over there, and Red has a nail gun. So I start like running around as a duck, flying around, and they're trying to shoot me as Red peeks behind the hill, popping them with a nail gun. We were distracting while tackling. It was hilarious, but like. It's cool because you're right. Like you would think there'd be other ducks, but they're not. They're humans, and I feel like it's almost like somebody played the game Squirrel with a gun, and then we're all like, you know what? I like Rust. I like that game. We're going to put it together, but we're going to use ducks this time. And I really think it hit home because, like, even like, exploring the world and like kind of doing stuff, you find like key cards. There's a trader. The trader was fascinating because you use feathers to trade.
I didn't find the trader. When I raided that barn and took out the hunters in the barn, I actually found a vending machine inside the barn and it
Ooh.
sold blueprints. It also took the feathers, and I think the cheapest thing I found in there was like 120 feathers. So, and I think I had 6 at the time. So yeah, I mean, it's the currency in the game. I don't think it's meant for you to easily get those and be able to get all the blueprints right away and super easily. It's meant for you to work towards it. But you're right. If you can't find those feathers, or if you're carrying those feathers and you get taken out, you're going to lose those feathers. But I did notice that you get those feathers from breaking those metal barrels we were talking about. So breaking into things like that and looting certain areas. I found some feathers in crates in that barn. But again, I was finding like 2 or 3 feathers per crate. So I didn't have very many whenever I actually found the vending machine. But I opted into taking them back to my base and storing them in my chest instead of carrying them with me. That way I can kind of save up on those instead of losing them the next time I get hunted.
Now, speaking of base building is pretty much identical to the game we talked about in the very beginning. It's similar to, and honestly, again, it's familiar. It's easy to understand, and it wasn't hard to get up to. I think the last tier, which was the sheet metal tier, you had to have a level 2 workbench to be able to mass produce the sheet metal. But like it was pretty easy to get set up. Now, this is a relatively new game, so like a lot of the progression hasn't advanced as far as like the game that we talked about earlier, but it was very comforting knowing how to build. Now, me and Red Falcon got rated, I think a total of like 3 times. We've been playing for like 2 weeks now. And every time we got better at building the base, or rather, Red did. I didn't do a lot of building. I got a lot of material gathering. He was the builder. But like even in the last base we had, which was like built kind of like a Rust base, where it has the center core, it has multiple doors in and out, in and throughout the entire base, and then you have like little spike wall build out kind of honeycomb structure set up. And apparently he informed me that even though he built it only like 3 days ago, he logged on that night and it was destroyed within like I think of the day it wiped that day. He built the whole base that day. And then by the time he went to log in the next morning, it was gone. So PvP is very alive. And we chose a server that didn't have a lot of people on it to begin with. So, like, the base building in the game is great. And the rating in the game is obviously very active because we just kept getting our base wiped out.
I like the base building. Honestly, it feels like Rust, but it feels easier. It doesn't I don't know if it's easier to get the materials or if you have less materials, but I felt like I could get a base up quicker in this game than in other games, which is important to me in a game like this that has regular wipes but also has raids when you're not on the server, because as I've said with these other games that have your base and your character stay live when you're not on the server, if you don't have a lot of time to play, if your base decays and you don't have a lot of time to play, you can lose all that progress you made. And which is again why I got 6 days worth of supplies. So I knew I would have a base to come back. I wasn't playing on a super packed server. I knew there was a chance I would get raided, but if I didn't, I would still have a base. Unfortunately, I didn't know the server was going to wipe, so I had to start over. But again, that's fine. I was able to take an hour and rebuild almost the exact same base that I had in a different area.
The one other thing I would like to talk about before we wrap up our first impressions of this game is I would have to talk about the combat. Actually, I know we were talking about fighting the NPCs, and I talked a little bit about the PvP. I experienced PvP myself up in the air, and I had two ducks actually following me. I only saw one of them, but the one that was following me was shooting me with a nail gun, and I could hear the nails whizzing by me. I love the fact that they put effort into the sound effects, although I think there's too many ambient sound effects right now, but you can turn those down individually inside your sound settings. But the combat itself, the fact I can hear the bullets going past me, nails in this case, I even heard an arrow whiz by me. They make different sounds, which is kind of cool because it allows me to tell whether or not I'm actually being fired upon from a different kind of gun or whatever. Like, when a hunter shoots at me with a hunting rifle, I can hear it. It sounds like a when it goes by me. When it was the nail gun, it sounded like a whistle, right? It's kind of the same with the arrow, but the combat itself, I flipped around and I could see them doing that three-dimension thing I was talking about, and I could see PvP in this game. Like if I was able to engage because I had nothing on me, being a lot of fun because like you almost have to master it because you can't fly. Well, you can coast it in the sky forever, but you can't like actively go up and down or fly fast forward. You use your stamina, and I believe that that's an interesting element to this, and it's one of the more unique things about the game. And I have to say, I think I had a lot of fun fighting the NPCs, so I believe I would have a lot more fun fighting the PvP. I ended up dying in the PvP, by the way. They shot me with the nail gun, and I fell, and my body went under the water. And I don't think you can dive in the game, so haha to them. But it was pretty cool. I think they tried to get Red as he was coming out of the base, and he was like, "Oh no!" and he jumped back in the base and closed the door. And it was a lot of fun.
I love the flight mechanics and the fact that that's what uses your stamina. You can sprint as the duck and use stamina as well, but if you're trying to fly higher, you use stamina. If even if you're trying to flap your wings and slowly lower yourself to the ground, it uses stamina. And
Hmm.
there's fall damage. Like obviously if
Oh
a
yeah.
bird falls from the sky there's going to be damage, but you don't think about that when you're playing a video game of a duck. Like you don't, you're just like, oh okay, I'm not going to hit the ground hard, I can just flap my wings. No, if you run out of stamina or you hit the wrong button or you do a dive too steep into the ground, you take that damage as well. This game feels very much like it look when you start it, it looks like it's going to be kind of a satire game. It's going to be kind of a joke. It's meant to be funny, it feels like. But then you start playing and you start realizing like there's care put into this game. There's a lot of thought behind even some of the goofy stuff.
I have to say, this is definitely a game I think that we'll be covering again in the future because I had a lot of fun playing it with Red, and it sounds like you really enjoyed yourself. Folks, this is our first impressions of Duckside. Thank you very much for watching The State of Survival. Join me in thanking Dimension and Red Falcon for always being in the background and helping me keep the show going. Ta ta for now.
Like you in another dimension.